At the busy courthouse entrance, a black judge named Robert Williams approaches, dressed impeccably in his suit and carrying his briefcase. As he nears the entrance, a white police officer, Jack Thompson, notices him and becomes suspicious, assuming he's in the wrong area. Thompson stops Judge Williams, requesting identification in a firm tone. Judge Williams responds calmly, explaining that he's a judge at this courthouse, but the officer remains skeptical, insisting he prove his position. Judge Williams feels a mixture of frustration and disappointment as he realizes he's being profiled despite his respected role. Inside the courthouse, other officials start noticing the commotion at the entrance. A few colleagues recognize Judge Williams and approach, addressing him with respect. Realizing his mistake, Officer Thompson's demeanor changes, and he stammers an apology, embarrassed by his assumption. Judge Williams, while frustrated, chooses to respond with professionalism, explaining to Officer Thompson the importance of checking biases and recognizing people by their merits, not appearances. Thompson listens, visibly affected, and thanks Judge Williams for his patience and understanding. The two part ways with a newfound respect for one another. The encounter leaves Officer Thompson with a lasting impression, challenging him to rethink his assumptions, while Judge Williams walks away proud to have turned an uncomfortable moment into an opportunity for growth and awareness. As Judge Williams walks into the courthouse, he's left reflecting on the moment. He's used to facing challenges in the courtroom, but this experience has felt different. Despite his professional achievements and the years he spent working to earn respect, this incident was a stark reminder of how prejudice can still exist in unexpected places. Officer Thompson, on the other hand, returns to his post, his mind racing. His actions were uncharacteristic of the respect he usually shows people in his line of duty. He has always prided himself on fairness, but in that moment, he allowed assumptions to override his judgment. The interaction with Judge Williams is haunting him, and he's unable to shake the uncomfortable feeling that he might have crossed a line. As the day goes on, both men reflect on their roles. Judge Williams faces the daily challenges of balancing his duties while fighting against systemic biases, but he's always done so with grace. Today, he had hoped for a peaceful start to his workday, but instead, he finds himself carrying a new weight, the burden of teaching a lesson in humility to someone who should have known better. Meanwhile, Officer Thompson's shift is filled with a quiet contemplation. He replays the interaction in his mind, wondering how many other people he's unknowingly prejudged. He thinks about his training, his role as a protector of the public, and the trust that's expected of him. He starts to question whether he's truly been living up to that trust. Later that evening, Officer Thompson takes a moment to look up Judge Williams' credentials. He learns more about the judge's background, his career, and the respect he commands within the community. Thompson is struck by the contrast between his initial suspicion and the person Williams truly is. The next morning, as Judge Williams arrives at the courthouse, he's surprised to see Officer Thompson waiting for him. The officer approaches, his expression one of genuine humility. "Officer Thompson, Judge Williams, I owe you an apology. Yesterday I made an assumption and I was wrong. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I want to thank you for showing me a better way to handle things. I'll be more aware of my actions moving forward." Judge Williams looks at him, his expression softening. He appreciates the officer's honesty but knows that this moment represents something much bigger than just an apology. Judge Williams, "Thank you, officer. Takes courage to admit when we've made a mistake. I hope you'll take this experience and use it to challenge any assumptions you might have moving forward. We all have a role in making the world more just, and it starts with us." The two share a brief handshake, an unspoken acknowledgement of their shared humanity. For Officer Thompson, the encounter has been a lesson in humility and understanding. For Judge Williams, it's another reminder that, despite the challenges of his position, moments like these can be opportunities for growth, both for himself and those around him. As Judge Williams walks into the courthouse, he feels a small sense of hope. While the world is far from perfect, change often begins with difficult conversations and the willingness to learn. And, for the first time in a while, he feels optimistic that both he and Officer Thompson are now part of that change. The day continues, but the impact of their exchange lingers, a quiet reminder that even the most uncomfortable moments can lead to unexpected growth and understanding. As the day unfolds, the ripple effect of that encounter begins to spread. Officer Thompson, having learned from his mistake, takes a more mindful approach during his duties. He starts engaging more respectfully with everyone, no longer allowing stereotypes or assumptions to cloud his judgment. He becomes more conscious of the way he interacts with the public, remembering the lesson Judge Williams taught him about empathy and seeing people for who they truly are, not just by appearances or assumptions. Later that week, Officer Thompson is called to assist in another situation at the courthouse, this time with a group of protesters who are demonstrating outside. As he approaches, he notices a few familiar faces in the crowd. People who had been in the courthouse before, people who might have previously felt uneasy around officers. He takes a deep breath, determined to approach the situation differently. Instead of immediately asserting authority or assuming hostility, Officer Thompson decides to engage with the protesters in a calm, respectful manner. He listens to their concerns, asking questions to understand their position rather than dismissing them outright. As the conversation progresses, the protesters begin to see a change in him. The tension slowly dissipates, and a dialogue starts where there had once been conflict. One of the protesters, a young woman named Maria, recognizes Officer Thompson and approaches him after the crowd starts to disperse. "Maria, you're the officer from the courthouse, aren't you? The one who stopped the judge? I saw that. I just wanted to say thank you for hearing us out today. Not a lot of officers do that." Thompson nods, humbled by her words. He doesn't need any praise, but he feels a deep sense of gratitude for the chance to do things differently. "Officer Thompson, I appreciate you saying that. I've been thinking a lot about how I interact with people, especially since that day with Judge Williams. I want to make sure I'm doing my part in fostering understanding, not just enforcing rules." Maria smiles, seeing the sincerity in his words. She realizes that, while the officer's actions may have initially been questionable, he's genuinely trying to be better. She extends her hand. "Maria, it's good to see you trying. We all have our moments, but it's what we do after that counts." Officer Thompson shakes her hand, grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow. It's clear that this experience is not just changing him, it's changing the way he sees the world around him. Meanwhile, Judge Williams continues his work at the courthouse, but something has shifted in him as well. While he's always been aware of the biases people may hold, this experience has reinforced the importance of standing firm in his identity and using every opportunity to educate and uplift others. He finds himself mentoring younger colleagues, sharing with them not just the technicalities of the law, but the emotional intelligence required to navigate difficult situations with grace. He talks to them about patience and understanding, emphasizing that, as public figures, they have a unique opportunity to challenge stereotypes and lead by example. One afternoon, as Judge Williams finishes a trial, a colleague, Judge Maria Rodriguez, approaches him with a concerned look on her face. "Judge Rodriguez, Judge Williams, I've been meaning to ask you something. You seem to handle the pressures of being in the public eye with such composure. How do you do it? How do you stay calm when people misunderstand or doubt you?" Judge Williams looks at her, thinking for a moment before answering. "Judge Williams, it's not always easy. There are days when I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. But I remind myself that my role is bigger than just the cases I handle. It's about setting an example for others. It's about teaching people that we can choose how we respond to challenges. The way we handle adversity shapes the way others perceive us and shapes the world we live in." Judge Rodriguez nods, absorbing his words. She's always admired his poise, but now sees the deeper purpose behind it. "Judge Rodriguez, thank you, Judge. I'll remember that next time I face a difficult situation." As the weeks pass, both Officer Thompson and Judge Williams continue to reflect on their paths. The small interaction they had that day at the courthouse has led to significant personal growth for both of them. Officer Thompson becomes more proactive in addressing biases, taking additional diversity and inclusion training, and working to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Judge Williams, though already an influential figure, finds himself more motivated than ever to continue breaking down barriers. He uses his position to advocate for reforms, for greater equity within the justice system, and for the importance of empathy in all walks of life. One day, months after their initial encounter, Officer Thompson and Judge Williams run into each other once more outside the courthouse. This time, their conversation is not one of apology or correction, but of mutual respect and understanding. Officer Thompson, Judge Williams, I just wanted to let you know, I've made a real effort to change how I approach people. I've learned a lot since that day, and I appreciate your patience with me. I hope you've noticed the difference. Judge Williams, I have, and I'm proud of you. We all have to keep learning. Change isn't easy, but it's worth it. They shake hands once again, this time with a true sense of camaraderie. As they go their separate ways, both men carry the lessons learned from that one pivotal moment. For Officer Thompson, the journey toward greater understanding is just beginning. For Judge Williams, it's a reminder that change doesn't just come from the decisions made in courtrooms, but from the conversations and the connections we build every day. And, in this case, it all began with an unexpected encounter outside the courthouse. As time goes on, both Officer Thompson and Judge Williams find themselves in positions where they can influence others in meaningful ways. Officer Thompson, deeply impacted by his initial interaction with Judge Williams, continues to grow both personally and professionally. He starts volunteering in community outreach programs, participating in workshops focused on racial biases and building trust between law enforcement and marginalized communities. The lessons he learned from that day shape his actions and his approach to the public. He even begins mentoring younger officers, ensuring they understand the importance of empathy, fairness, and seeing people as individuals, not stereotypes. Judge Williams, too, carries the lessons from his encounter with Officer Thompson into his work. His experiences have only strengthened his resolve to be a catalyst for change, not just within the courthouse, but in the wider community. He begins to speak at public forums, advocating for judicial reform and emphasizing the need for empathy in law enforcement. His speeches inspire those around him, encouraging people to challenge their own biases and think critically about how they treat others. One day, several months after their first meeting, Judge Williams is invited to speak at a conference on diversity and inclusion. As he stands on the stage before an audience of law enforcement officers, judges, and community leaders, he reflects on how far he's come. He speaks passionately about the need for more open conversations about race, bias, and justice, urging everyone to examine their own actions and assumptions. His words resonate deeply with the audience, many of whom find themselves questioning their own practices and attitudes. After the conference, Judge Williams is approached by Officer Thompson, who attended the event. Thompson thanks Judge Williams for his impactful speech, explaining how it has inspired him to continue challenging his own biases. The two share a brief but meaningful conversation, reaffirming the respect they've developed for each other. Neither man mentions the incident at the courthouse. They don't need to. Both understand that their journey of growth and learning began with that moment, and neither of them will ever forget it. As they part ways, it's clear that both Officer Thompson and Judge Williams have not only grown personally but have become instruments of change in their respective fields. The lesson they learned from one another, the importance of humility, empathy, and the willingness to learn from our mistakes, has shaped their futures, and they now use their positions to foster understanding and build stronger, more inclusive communities. And so, what began as an uncomfortable encounter outside the courthouse became a turning point in both of their lives. Through dialogue, humility, and a shared commitment to change, they were able to transform a moment of tension into a lasting lesson that would inspire others for years to come.